Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Circuit de Spa Francorchamps here in Stavelot, Belgium. We were here 2 nights ago for the reserve program, and now the final endurance week of the season kicks off here at one of the most historic venues in Formula One history. A track that has been around since the 1920s and has undergone significant changes since then, but it's a track that is known for high speed, great technicality, and peak weather shenanigans. So all those things will be considered here. My name is Patrick Coleman, aka Rekus, and alongside me tonight, it's been a while since he's been in the commentary booth, but we're glad to have him back all the same. Barry FC. Barry, how you doing tonight, mate?
I'm doing very good, thank you. I'm really excited for this race. Like you said, there's a lot of history at this track, and I think depending on what the weather looks like, it's a track that really does separate the good from the great drivers. And in a division like this, where the pace is insane, I think even though there could be some stints of inaction, I think we're maybe going to see who really has that little bit of margin that makes them a truly great driver in Division One today.
Yeah, exactly that. And with every championship just getting red hot, you know that it is going to be a fantastic time here. There's only 4 rounds left of the championship, including tonight. We only got 3 more rounds after this. We go to Monaco, which is going to be a beautiful race because, well, yes, it is Monaco. Not exactly the not exactly the greatest track for overtaking. However, it is a Monaco night race, so that will go ahead and switch things up a bit. And then we go to Zandvoort and then Silverstone, the home of British motorsport, to wrap things up. I hear race cars on track, and I know you guys want to see race cars on track. So let's go ahead and take a look at the race cars on track. Only 14 drivers here tonight, but this should give everybody a lot of room to operate when it comes to the qualifying. We do have Hastan, we have Symphonic, Pop Top Bongo, Daniel Rocks, Ryan Adair with his new username debuting tonight, and then we have M. John, Dito, Flubber, Anas Raiden, Katayusha, All About Dre, which is Meraki Dawn, and then we have Andre, and then JDI and Campbell Adams. Campbell Adams will be the favorite coming into this one. Everyone's going to expect really good pace, but is there any driver you think we should keep an eye on here tonight, Barry?
It's really tough to say, to be honest. I think before we saw the attendance and the check-in, you would have fancied another great battle between the second Red Bull and also Fat Cab. Obviously, we've only got Campbell, like you said. I'm actually quite intrigued to see what the battle is going to be for the best of the rest. Particularly seeing maybe how Dre, aka Marakidon, as we know him best, how he does faring across this. Yeah, I think it's going to be more in terms of when we're looking at who's going to be winning the race. I think it will be more how much does Campbell win by, unless someone really steps up to challenge him. So yeah, I think that middle of the pack and those challenges for the podium are going to be the places that we want to watch the most.
Yeah, exactly that. So, I mean, right now, this would be a good chance for Campbell Adams to really make some way up the standings. He is currently pretty far down there, but he is only a reserve. And actually, a driver who I will be really keeping an eye on tonight will be JDI, because JDI is currently third in the championship. But here's the thing about that. He is only 5 points behind second place of Mick Jammy, and overall only about 21 points back from Fat Cat. Neither of which are competing tonight. So this is JDI's chance to jump up to the top of the championship border here with 3 rounds to go. So this will definitely be a crucially important race for the Kick Sauber tonight. Taking a look at other standings just throughout the field, for the constructors too, this could be a really fun one. As we see that it is Mercedes on top at the moment, but there's only, Mercedes, they're probably going to be the ones that take the championship hit the least because they have Both of the drivers, both are really quick drivers in their own right. Ferrari versus Red Bull. This will be a fun one. There's only a singular Ferrari on track tonight, being Ryan Adair, who's reserving up from Div 2. But we know Ryan can put in some extremely good performances as Andre makes his way through the rest of the lap. Let's see what his first time is going to be. It is the longest lap on the calendar, 7.004 kilometers in length, making this the longest track here. And it is a 41.699 to go ahead and kick things off here. So, you're saying that Marakinan was going to be a driver to really keep an eye on here tonight. Any other drivers that you're going to be keeping an eye on here tonight?
Honestly, I think from an entertainment standpoint, I think like you said, JDI, where this is a massive chance for him to climb above Jamie. I think there could be a really good fight on our hands between him and Pop Top Bingo as well. So yeah, I think that's going to be the key battle as Campbell Adams goes there, pole the 140.8. I think those two, and really will probably come down to strategy, come down to who can keep it consistent. They could be on for a really good fight towards the end and an entertaining one. I think especially with the fact you mentioned the constructors, Ruckus. I think Mercedes have got a really good chance to really claw back and close that gap even more, maybe even overtake Alpine. Alpine have gone from really dominating the overalls to Mercedes actually looking like they could, really cause an upset here. So this could be potentially the start of one hell of a shift in the dynamic in the overalls fight there.
Yeah, exactly. They are exactly 100 points ahead of Williams, and they are just shy of 100 points of Alpine in the overall. So this will be, and it does help their case that Mercedes, like you said, Mercedes has been extremely strong in recent times. They've had a really good week in Austria. I think they also had a really good week in Baku as well. VCarb is another team that has had some really good pace as of late, but we'll see if that pace can translate here to Spa Francorchamps. It's not a very high tire degradation track. Tire degradation here isn't really as high. There's really only one of the factors that really contributes into high tire deg is massive sweeping corners. You really only got one of them on this track, and that's in Sector 2. So tire degradation isn't going to be super high. Two stops are usually kind of the name of the game when it comes to these 100% races. So I think unless rain comes in and kind of shakes everything up, it should be a pretty simple affair here tonight.
Yeah, no, I do agree. I mean, especially with the 100% races, you tend to see a lot more people opt for the soft tyre, given the deg is, of course, significantly lower. So you might see a lot of people potentially start if maybe some people struggling qualifying, and they might opt for a bit of an alternative strategy. But yeah, I think it really is going to come down to people just making sure they stay patient in their battles. If there's any weather, like you said, I think if we can get some rain, potentially some interchangeable conditions, that could make it great for both watching racing and commentating as well. So I know I'll definitely be hoping for a little bit of rain somewhere in the middle of that race.
Yeah, it could really shift up the entire dynamic of the race here in Spa. Spa is known for its kind of bipolar weather. Being a Florida man myself, I know a thing or two about bipolar weather because I've seen a thing or two about bipolar weather. So I know that rain kind of just tends to spawn in between sessions. So we'll see if that's the case here tonight. It doesn't look like it though. I mean, it looks pretty nice and sunshiny. It looks like probably actually a pretty good breeze out there on circuit. It's probably a beautiful, beautiful place to be right now. Um, as we do go through, everybody's back into the pits, so they're gonna wait until what I like to call rush hour. Which, if for those of you maybe new, well, first of all, thank you for tuning on in. What rush hour pretty much is rush hour is what I like to call the final minutes of qualifying because it gets really busy really quickly, and sometimes on especially on some smaller tracks it does get bunched up like rush hour traffic. I'm sure the 5 o'clock rush hour hits and work the work highways get pretty backed up. I know at least they do here in the states. I'm pretty sure in Australia it's probably a similar thing when you get off of work and the roads are just absolutely packed. That's kind of what happens in qualifying in the last couple of minutes. So we'll probably see a lot of drivers really just try to push for that. But with it being a 7 kilometer long circuit, the L lap here is pretty extensive.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the key things that you could see Campbell Adams was so keen to get back out on track, maybe just to set herself another banker. Where a lot of these really crucial corners where there's so much time gained and lost, the track evolution around here tends to be absolutely phenomenal around sector 2. So it looks like Campbell's going to be trying to get another lap in, get straight back in the pits ready for a fresh set of softs and really securing it. He knows he's probably the quickest driver on track, but with Spa, because it's so easy to just take a little bit too much curb, be a bit too brave going into the entry for a corner, you don't want to make a mistake and then get caught down the back, especially where, like we said, with these 100% races, people can push and go longer on tyres than they normally want. So he is going to be keen to make sure he gets that pole lap secured.
Yeah, it's gonna be very interesting to kind of just see how the just to kind of see how the strategy plays out here tonight. Because typically it's medium hard is usually the kind of the, one of the go-to strats for the track here. And I think it's actually more due to it's in the real world it's usually actually more due to weight, because the more rubber you burn off of these tires, the less your car weighs. And we saw it in 2024 with George Russell. He had a fantastic one-stop race, but unfortunately, his car was just underweight at the end, so he just didn't have enough rubber on the car, and he got disqualified for just being under the weight limit, which is really unfortunate considering that. Granted, I'm not the biggest George Russell fan on the planet, but it was a good drive. It was a good use of just good tire management. And I think, but with that not being a factor, track limits certainly are, though, as Campbell Adams does invalidate his lap time. I think we could see some really. I mean, I don't foresee a one stop happening, but who knows? Maybe.
Yeah, maybe if there's a safety car that comes at the right time, it certainly could happen. I think you certainly can pull a one stop off here, but obviously the key thing is it quicker? Is it willing? You having to compensate on your exit. Does looking after those tyres hurt your lap time so much as there's a big spin from M John right there going into sector 2. Just about managed to stop himself having to retire the car, taking that terminal damage. He definitely would have lost his wing, but it is getting busy now. He's going to have to make sure he doesn't impede anyone whilst he tries to get back to the pits in time to get another lap in. And that's like you said there, Reckers. The track limits are brutal, and if you do go off, chances are you're either going to completely kill that lap or you are losing some serious time.
Yeah, well, the invalidations aren't as brutal as, say, last week when we were at Austria, or even the week before in Imola. Those two tracks are really bad for track limit invalidations. But with this track, you don't really. There's a few spots you can get invalidated on, but the bigger issue is the grass. If you touch that grass, you are likely going to lose so much traction. You're just going to spin. As I was driving on this track actually earlier today, and some of these corners it's really easy to just get up on the grass and just bleed out so much time. And yeah, I mean, good for M. John for saving it and not getting that terminal damage, because that would have been a rough one here. As we pretty much enter Spa's rush hour, as we're down to the final 5 minutes. A lot of drivers already pushing on a lap here, as we do have Ryan Adair making his way down the Camel Straight, coming into Les Combs and Malmedy, which I am probably going to mispronounce some of these names, but looks like Ryan had a tad of a snap. I think he just touched a bit of gravel coming through the Les Combs chicane, and now making his way through the Brussels hairpin, coming through Speaker's Corner, which is where I believe we saw M. John have his moment just a bit earlier, as Ryan Adair is going to continue on through his lap. I mean, this is a really fun track, probably one of my favorite tracks to drive. So that is very nice to see. And also to answer the question in chat, yeah, somebody did a 41.0 with a realistic Haas. That's That's actually pretty impressive. That's a good lap time there. Let's see how the rest of this goes. It's 4 minutes to go. Right now, Campbell Adams on the top of the timing tables with a 140.808. And this is the only qualifying session of the race. We go straight from this to a 100% Grand Prix. So 44 laps here around Belgium, twice what we did in the reserve program 2 nights ago. So I'll be very, very keen to see how the rest of this one pans out. Speaking of, we should be getting a reveal of next season's calendar sooner rather than later. So as all the drivers kind of get ready for their final lap here, Barry. Oh, we're actually having some battling here between Anis Raiden and Daniel. Both of which have invalidated laps, by the way, but they're still like going side by side and racing it here. So we got racing before the Grand Prix itself. But the question I was going to ask, and this is a question for everybody in the chat as well. What track are you hoping to see on next season's calendar?
You know, the track for me, and I know it's been a little bit controversial. I'm really excited to see what the Mad Ring brings, and I'm hoping it'll be in the DLC. I'd think everyone would agree it's more likely to be in it than not. I know there's a few corners that people are a little bit worried about how it may make for racing, but I think it's one of those where it's new. Even some of our top drivers are going to have to put a lot of time in to learn the really good overtakes, when to and when to not go for moves. I think you might even see some moves you probably shouldn't make that end up, maybe causing a few tires to bump. But yeah, that's the one I'm really looking forward to the most. How about you?
Honestly, same. I think the Madrid is going to be a really fun one. It's going to be a fun track. I'm looking forward to it in the real world as well. I think we will be racing before the DLC comes out. I think, unless at least as far as I know, we'll be kind of, or we might do a micro season or do social races. We might do something in between, because I mean, if the DLC is expected in June, it's just now May, so it's gonna be a bit of a while. But the Madrid is definitely a track I'm gonna be real looking forward to. And it was actually just highlighted in chat. I'm going to be a sucker, and I'm going to be practically on my hands and knees begging for Miami to come back. I know it's not everybody's favorite track. It's a controversial track, but I do live like less than an hour and a half away from the Miami International Autodrome. So, of course, I gotta root for my home track to come back onto the calendar. Coda would be a fun one to see as well, make a good return. Um, and I hope we get Austria back, because Austria last week was really good. But yeah, the Madrid is it's gonna be such an interesting one, because kind of like Turkey, really, we don't really. It's even more so for the Madrid. We really don't have a lot of information on it in recent times, because while the Madrid is brand new, no, like, I mean, it's been so long since we've been to Turkey, and the cars have changed so drastically since the last time we were at Turkey. It'll be an interesting run. And I'm not
Yeah,
surprised SJ
no,
knows them all.
absolutely. Yeah, I can't say too much. I have some inside information, but I will save that for the full reveal of what's planned for next season.
Yeah, I know the calendar is done. And the only thing I can reveal is that there will be racetracks on the calendar. That is all I can reveal. That's actually all I know,
There
really.
will be races, there will be checkered flags, and there will be tires on tracks. That much we know.
I will tell you one track that's not on the calendar though. The Circuit de la Sarthe is not on the calendar, unfortunately. I wish. For those of you who don't know, that is the Circuit de la Sarthe is it's the track that is used for the 24 hours of Le Mans. So it's not even available on the F1 games, unfortunately. Qualifying is done and dusted here, as we see a lot of drivers trying to push on for their final laps. We're seeing that Campbell Adams is really just trying to hold on to the battery. Can he improve his already rapid lap time here? The answer is yes, he does. A 140.676. That is going to be a very good improvement there. What about the other Mercedes? Can Pop Top improve? He's up into third, so two Mercedes in the top three. What about Hastan? We're going to see Ryan Adair come across the line next, just ahead of Hastan. Some improvements there. Hastan actually jumps up Andre up into the top three, so Andre might be a driver to kind of watch tonight. As let's see here, JDI. I don't. Yeah, JDI is not going to make any improvements here, so the driver who stands to gain the most is going to be only down to P6, maybe even lower, depending on. Oh, Aiden's ready. He cuts it there, so that's his qualifying done and dusted. What about, well, Marakidon's not improving. What about Daniel? Daniel just crossed the line. So, your qualifying order is set with Campbell Adams taking pole position by just under 3/10 of a second.
I'll tell you what, Reckers, this final qualifying standing is really interesting, especially we've already spoken about the constructors and the dynamic that Mercedes might be swinging it in their way. Toast there, or Jay has reserving for Alpine today in Division 1, really making a statement that actually Campbell Adams might not run away with it today. He's going to be really hunting him down as much as he can for the entirety of this 100% race. Pop Top up in P5 there with Katusha really struggling down in P13, albeit it is quite close, but when you look at the gaps between Flubber and P13 there, this is going to be a really interesting run, Rekus. I know, like we've said, 100% races can become a little bit of a bore fest at times, but I think this qualifying standing actually makes me think this could be really interesting.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, you bring up a really good point. I mean, I think this one's really going to come down to strategy, because strategy could be a huge factor here at this track, as the L laps are very long and you got to make the most of them. Your qualifying order as it sits, they all conveniently appear up on just one screen. It is going to be Campbell Adams out of Hastan, Andre, M. John, Pops Up Bongo, JDI, Aiden is Raiden, Ryan Adair. I almost said Osama bin Adair. I feel like that's going to be a fun one. That's going to catch us one of these times. And then it's going to be Flubber ahead of Dito, Symphonic, Katusha, and Daniel jumping up to Div 1 for tonight. This should be a fantastic one. The battle between Alpine and Mercedes is still going to be red hot here coming into Belgium. But we know that the run into La Source is a very short run. It's a shorter run here into turn one. What are you predicting the strategy is going to be like here, Barry? Because I think it's going to be medium, medium hard is probably going to be the go-to.
Yeah, I would certainly say if it looks like the conditions are going to stay dry, I think that's absolutely what you go for. I guess the question is, what confidence do the drivers have to maybe consider a medium, hard, medium and finishing the race on that faster stint? It's a real gamble when you look at deviating away from what the rest of the grid are going to do, but it has really big rewards. It is looking a little bit overcast there in the background as we see the drivers all on the grids being ready to pick their strategies. So could that be disrupted? Could we see a little bit of rain maybe at the end or halfway? But like I said, if it stays dry, I think medium, medium, hard, unless you are feeling particularly brave, it's gonna have to be the go-to. Maybe some of the drivers at the back might start on the hards, hope for an early instant, just jump up some positions if they see some early pits. But I don't think we'll see too much deviation from that.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not too sure. My meteorologist, my insider meteorologist, says that rain isn't expected here. The clouds look more threatening than they probably really are gonna be, at least according to my insider source, my fantastic weather person that I have just on the inside. That I wish I had insider info on the calendar, but that's all I got. But rain might not be a factor in this race, so we could see a bit of a dry run all throughout. I wonder if anyone's going to risk it on the soft. I don't really see a strategy where that could work unless you go for something really aggressive. A aggressive soft tire strat might be a bit of a interesting play here, especially considering the tire drag isn't that high. You don't get a lot of laps off the soft tire, but that is with the virtue of the fact that this track is absolutely massive. It used to be even bigger than it is now. It used to be around almost 15 kilometers in length, in its original variation from the 1920s, I think until about like the 1980s. Seems like some drivers are really considering their strategy, as that is what we're waiting on here at the moment. Drivers just trying to wait on the strategy and just try to see how they're going to try to plan their race out. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's a smaller grid tonight for Div 1. So, very small, or small grid by Div 1 standards, and especially for a track like Spa. But I still think that Div 1, if any Div can make a smaller grid interesting, it's probably going to be Div 1. So I think we have some interesting races coming up throughout the season.
Yeah, I do completely agree. And people are going to be keen to get these extra points. There's more on the table for these 100% races. So those guys are really pushing on both the drivers and the constructors are going to want to make sure they can get that extra position or two. They will. And you mentioned the softs. We get ready to go. Could JD be starting on them? As we have 5 red lights and we're ready to go. And away we are. Let's see what the starts are going to look like. Records. It looks like everyone's got a relatively decent start there. Not too much interchange going on. There's a big dive on the inside of the Alpine locker. There's a spin.
Oh, it's Andre! Andre has just gone around, and that is a massive drama at the get-go. Andre had such a good qualifier, but he gets spun around in the opening stages. He actually, unless he's got floor damage, he somehow got away with that with no damage on to the Williams, and that is unfortunate to see here as we see Dino and Katusha going ahead to try to scrap it out for a position, trying to fight it out. Ryan Adair and Marakidon going to fight out. Marakidon, the only driver who actually did start on soft tires, so he's going to be really punching here. The former NA champion, I think the only American on the grid here tonight is going to go ahead and just try to fight. He's been a pretty solid force here, and it looks like actually, according to the Amazon race strategies, a one-stop is going to be the go-to here. And yeah, we'll see how this one goes. Curious to see how the stewards review that incident. I was joking with Phoenix, who is one of the. You'll see them on commentary a bit later on. I think they are going to do Div 5 and 3, I want to say. But they're also a steward in Div 3, so I was talking with them that this was probably going to be the one track where this one in Silverstone will probably have the least amount of incidents. Not exactly a great start to that. Thinking a little bit of a commentator's curse there as we're seeing Marakidon get really punchy here against Ryan Adair. Trying to go ahead and see as Flubber does make a pit stop, probably to repair some wing damage. But is Marakidon going to go for it? The answer is not quite. La Source is really one of the few turn ones that you don't really want to try to make a dive into.
Yeah, I agree. I think even when you can get the move done, there's just so much time lost. If you're trying to catch a pack up in front, it sometimes really just isn't worth it and wait until you get to this straight here. Look how close Marakidon is. It seems like he's just holding back a little bit on purpose. And he's made up 4 places already. The only other driver that's managed to make more progress on the grid was Katusha, who's made up to P8s from P13. So Maraki's not going to be messing around. And the beauty is, if this was a 50% race, he's probably got 1 or 2 laps left to try and get some progress and get ahead of Lamb there. But actually, he's probably got a good 10 with how those softs go around on these 100% tracks. So he's going to be knocking on the door. He's going to be putting the pressure on. Lamb's just going to have to make sure he just stays nice and composed and keeps it close to JD up there in front of him.
Yeah, he's going to have to really... He's really going to have to go ahead and just try to keep an eye out, because Marakidon, he will go for a move if he sees it. He's like, he's almost like the Randy Orton here of Rush Racing League. If he sees an opportunity to go for the strike, Meraki will strike, and he'll try to get that position, especially being on the punchier tire like the softs, as we see here. And yeah, Andre just unfortunately being... I say this with 100% just being objective. He's the biggest loser when it comes to losing positions. Through, honestly, really no fault of his own. I think he just got hooked on, I want to say it was actually Flubber. It's either Flubber, I think even one of the Mercedes, somewhere in in that field. He just got turned around a bit at the start, which I mean, from what it looked like, it looked like he was just kind of a passenger. As we're seeing Meraki Don now, he is peaking. He is slithering his way around, trying to find a move. Just behind him, Katusha is going to get a move done on to Pop Top, and that's crucial in the overalls, considering that Alpine and Mercedes are going to absolutely just scrap it out here for these positions. And so far, it looks like that despite being on the punchier tire here, Barry, it doesn't look like Marakidan's been able to really make up any pace here.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because he was less than a tenth of a second for almost the entirety of the straight there. I wonder if it's intentional. I'm not sure why, or maybe it's just something to do with the setup. Maybe he hasn't got the straight line speed to pull off the overtake. So yeah, it's very, very, very interesting as to whether he might be holding back. Katusha is really pushing on as well. So if Meraki wants to make sure that he keeps pushing on and making progress as he's at risk of falling outside of DRS here, he's going to really have to get a move on as Katusha's knocking on the door and has managed to reinstate that DRS train from P1 all the way down to Symphonic in P11.
Yeah, no, actually, Pop Top is actually broken out of that DRS train. He is missing an end plate. He's missing that front right end plate. So Campbell Adams does set the new fastest lap of the race with a 1:45. I think it was a 4:03. I think was the lap time there. But with that being said, we're gonna see just some good runs here. Now it's tricky because dirty air it's a factor obviously with these ground effect cars. That's gonna be one of the biggest changes when we move to the 2026 regulations. That dirty air isn't nearly a factor, but look at this. It's going to be a very good run there from Aiden is rating his way up into P8, and that's another position dropped for the Mercedes man of Pop Top Bongo. He will go ahead and just drop down the order one little bit. He is down 4 positions from where he started here on the day, as it looks like it's going to be Toast still trying to chase down Campbell Adams. That's probably going to be one of the most important battles just throughout today, is going to be Campbell Adams and Toast. Just like what we talked about earlier, Alpine and Mercedes are going to be 2 teams we really need to keep an eye on, as Daniel gets a 3-second time penalty for track limit violations. He rocked and rolled a little bit too hard around the circuit and got penalized for it. Now, granted, this track is probably, out of all the tracks we have coming up, this is probably going to be the track with the least amount of track limit violations. But with that being said, we're still probably going to see a few of them here just by given the virtue of it being a 100% race.
Yeah, no, definitely. These races are a real test of, it's really mental stamina that really comes into it. Symphonic considered a move there on Pop Top there. Looked like he got, no, it looks like it's Dido he's potentially fighting there in the Williams. Pop Top comes into the pits. Looks like that missing end plate probably just taking too much time away from him. Yeah, once you get into the last sort of 25% of these races, that's when you can really start to see some of the penalties rack up, where people have spent a long time on 2 warnings and are really just starting to just lose that little bit of concentration there. Looks like Katusha as well is gone to a stage. He's going for a move on Marakidon to make his 7th position up the grid as we were on lap 5. And they're still side by side between Raiden and Meraki there. I think Raiden looks like he may potentially get the move stuck there. It's very close. He's managed to get it done. Is Meraki going to go for it back down here?
Oh, it's a tap and a spin! Oh! A tap and a spin there. Marakidon just tapping that back right tire of the V-Carb. It is Red Bull on Red Bull violence here in the mountains of Belgium, here in the Ardennes Forest. Oh, that is unfortunate. And the soft gamble really has just not been working out for Marakidon. He's made up some positions, but he's lost about half the positions he made up here in the opening stints of the race. I mean, we're only 5 laps in. Granted, it's a longer lap comparatively, so it's probably about close to 10 laps maybe. Just like kind of comparing it to some other tracks on the calendar. And once again, this is going to be a tight one here as Andre gets past Daniel. That is for that P11 position on the road. Now, one driver I'm going to still kind of keep my eye on here is going to be JDI. Probably the singular driver with the most to gain here tonight.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And he's in a bit of a tough spot. You don't really want to risk going for a move when the gaps are what they are here. Any time lost could end up causing you to fall out of a really competitive DRS train here. So he's going to have to make sure if he does make a move, it's nice and clean, it is nice and smooth, and he doesn't end up fighting more than he needs to, especially where it looks like it's super close there between Campbell and Toast up in front. Yeah, JD does not want to get stuck outside and end up having to rely on something happening in this race. You want to make sure when you're fighting for, P2, P3 in these drivers' championships that you are doing everything you can to stay in control. So yeah, be keen to see, based on how the guys are managing their tyres, when they eventually decide to start making some moves and sticking that front wheel on the inside.
Yeah, it's more so the case here. It's a marathon, not a sprint, especially with these 100% races. So you're gonna definitely see some good runs all throughout. Ooh, Ryan getting a little snappy on corner exit there. That's not exactly ideal, but was well, and actually he almost dropped out of DRS range from JDI, so not quite. It's a pretty decent run here for the lone Ferrari on the circuit, as JDI is gonna try to close in that gap here. He's got a good run, and yeah, I think you nailed it perfectly, Barry. I think he's really just gonna try to hold on to that DRS, and he doesn't really need to risk it for the biscuit because it's only lap 7 out of 44 here tonight, so he's got time to operate with.
100%. And just looking at the battery reserves as well, what's really interesting is that JDI has 30% more battery than anyone in that top 5. So it's almost like he is just sort of taking it easy, not wanting to make any mistakes, and just knows that if he just keeps that deployment in none, looks after those tyres that little bit more, when we start getting to those pit windows, he might be able to really take advantage, maybe even get an overcut. It's really difficult to pull off, but just get the disparity in the battery usage is so big. That's got to be playing into some sort of strategy there. So that's going to be really interesting once we start to get to sort of 15, 16, 17 laps in. Is that maybe going to be when he just goes, right, now's the time for me to really deploy, really push what I've got left in these tyres, and just let the other guys fight it out. I mean, we see Toast is right on the back of Campbell Adams. Looks like he's really keen now to get past him. He did think about it in the last lap, but yeah, these next 10 laps, I think we'll just see how patient the drivers are. And like I said, when that pit window comes, that could be when we start to see the action.
Yeah, and normally the pit window is kind of where we see things kind of mellow out a bit. Is when everybody makes their first pit stop. It's when everything just kind of, everybody spreads out, everything just kind of simmers down a bit. But I think here might have the opposite effect. You might see the actual just everything actually close up a bit. We might see the actual convergence of everybody here on circuit. So that's going to be a fun one here to kind of witness and see how everything is going to go ahead and play out. Maragadon in the pit zone. He'll be getting off of those soft tires that didn't really do him too much good here, as it looks like he's actually lost a position. Oh, granted, that's due to him being in the pit, so that's not super surprising to see. But yeah, he really just did not get a good ROI on the softs. It was punchy at the start, but the fall off on the softs is definitely just not ideal, and you just lose so much time when those soft tires burn out. It's like the intermediates, come to think of it. When those things get too overheated, their fall off they have a worse fall off than the Roman Empire.
Yeah, if you stay on them for too long, you're just going to lose absolutely tons of time. You've really got to make sure that you time that pit stop right so you get as much out of them as you can. but making sure that as soon as that delta starts falling through the floor, you're getting straight off them and onto the quicker tyre. And in these kind of races, he's on the hard tyre now, which we've seen historically, even outside of the 100% races, hard tyres, they tend to be really far preferred, and drivers tend to feel a lot more comfortable on it. And especially with this track where there's a lot of, like you mentioned at the start, a lot of sweeping corners where you're just trying to carry as much pace in, you're just trying to take advantage of the rubber laid down. The hards really do come into their own. So it'll be intriguing to see how it pays off, whether those couple of positions he made up early on really benefit him. And I'm sure he'll be keen now that there's that those bunch at the front keep it nice and clean and tidy. I've actually noticed, records as well, that that Toast very briefly dropped out of DRS range there. And he's really low on battery, so is Campbell Adams. So this looks like it could start spicing up. If Campbell runs away from it, then John, JD, and Lamb, they're going to smell blood, and they're really going to come for that Alpine.
Yeah, I mean, you said it perfectly there, Barry. I mean, they're gonna be like sharks, just smelling that their prey is wounded and that their prey is pretty much right there for the taking. And yeah, it's interesting to note though, because with my experience with other sims or other similar platforms, it's interesting to note that in here in F125, and it might be the same for when the 2026 DLC comes around as well, the hard tire is one of the most preferred tires on offer. But in Gran Turismo, in the Super Formula scene in Gran Turismo, most people tend to avoid the hard tire like the plague. They would rather go for a 3-stop using multiple sets of softs comparing to using the hard tires. So just an interesting dynamic. Granted, two different softwares, two different developments, two different companies, different platforms, so etc. etc. But it is an interesting thing to note. And I mean, for some people who are watching maybe for the first time, like, maybe somebody that like if you're a parent watching, you may not know what the tire compounds, what's the difference between the compounds. Well, I'm going to go and explain those really quickly in case there are any parents watching. So those yellow medium tires, they're kind of like the 50-50. They're like the all-arounder tire. Equal grip, equal life expectancy is pretty much the name of the game for those tires, as we actually do see Toast, his DRS train chances are pretty much toast, as he is now almost 2 seconds, and he's going to lose one to M. John. And yeah, your prediction came to fruition there, Barry. And the hard tires, on the contrast, they're more the tanky class of tire. They can take a beating, but they just don't have the same grip. Soft tires, they're the red compound tire that we saw Marakidon, aka All About Dre, on earlier. And those are kind of the opposite. They're really quick, really grippy, but they die off super quickly. Back to the racing action. JDI, and he is also just smelling blood in the water. He can sense the fear that is radiating off a Toast. Probably more likely, it's probably not even actually just fear. It's probably just lack of ERS. But yeah, he's definitely in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, no, for sure. That gap is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I've noticed that Campbell's actually started taking it a bit easier on the battery now. Probably thinking he's got a nice cushion there just to look after those tyres, make them go that little bit longer, feel a bit more comfortable. Looks like Toast is going to be trying to line up a move to claim that position back on M. John. This is probably going to be what we start to see now until that first pit stop window comes, of just positions interchanging. But he's probably not going to go for it here. Like we said earlier, turn one's not really where you want to be making that position up. But we coming out of Eau Rouge here. As we see, there's plenty of battery. He's got 70%. He's kept ready there, 30% more than M. John. And he's just getting ready to absolutely dump that battery. Coming to the straight, 2 tenths behind. He's surely going to be making the move. Look at that exit. Look at the amount of power he's got there in the car. M. John's not even going to bother fighting it. He knows it's not worth it. There's JDI behind him, who'll be ready to pounce if there is any mistakes made. So yeah, like I said, I think this is pretty much going to be what the story is going to look like for the next sort of 6, 7 or 8 laps or so. But Lamb has fallen outside of DRS, so he's going to have to really push to get back inside that, ready for when they reach the end of this lap.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see when the pit stop phase is going to happen because we are, if this were American football terms, we'd be just wrapping up the first quarter of Grand Prix action here in the final Enduro race of the season. And I'll be curious to see what tracks become endurance rounds next time around. Just to give a bit of a recap on how the season has gone, we're going to go ahead and just talk about the calendar as the battles are kind of somewhat mellowing out here at this stage. So we started off the season in terms of 100% races, round 4 in Melbourne. The Rush Racing League Home Grand Prix was the first 100% race of the season in Australia. And then we had the next one in Hungary, which, funny enough, Campbell Adams actually won that race in Hungary. And then we had one in. And then the last one actually is here in Belgium. I feel like we had another one somewhere. I guess not. And we've had a few sprint weekends as well. Bahrain was a sprint, and that was a fun one. Shanghai always fantastic in that sprint format, and then we had Imola being the last sprint of the season. So some good times all the way around. And just looking at the remaining races next week on May 9th, it is going to be Monaco at night. So, and honestly, I may or may not have prayed and begged SJ to make that one a night race. So, I may or may not have been the reason why Monaco became a night race this season. But that should be a fun one. Then we head to Zandvoort, which I was actually also driving on the track earlier yesterday, and that's a fun track. Tough to pass on, but it is a beautiful roller coaster of a racing circuit. It's a shame that we're gonna see it get knocked off the calendar after the 2026 season. Hopefully, it's a short-term disappearance. And then we head to the home of British motorsport at Great Britain, Silverstone, one of the best tracks in the UK, and it'll be a fun one. Expect weather shenanigans at that track, if no other circuit. So, what would you say has been one of your favorite races so far this season, Barry? Either driving or commentating. Well, actually, I think you've only commentated Qatar Div 2, actually. So, what's been your favorite race here this season?
Yeah, I actually think that Austria for Division One might have been a contender. If not, I think definitely Division Two for Qatar was an interesting one. I think with Fat Cat coming in and just sheer dominance since being a reserve, I think it was time to see. And Campbell Adams did absolutely brilliantly. It was such a dynamic fight between them in the last sort of 25% of that race. I think it just showed that there's not one person that's ever going to just sit there and win every week in this league. There are people who are hungry, who are hungry to improve and to take that top spot away. And it's what Rush does best, is delivering high octane, exciting races. Yeah, I would probably say Austria, Division One, edges it for me. How about you?
That one's gonna be up there too, honestly. I loved Austria. It's probably one of my favorite tracks to commentate for. It's so good for racing. I mean, it's a track that rewards just ruthless aggression. Is kind of the name of the game of that track, like 2005 John Cena. It's all about the ruthless aggression. Another track that I really liked covering was Las Vegas. Las Vegas was a fun one. Singapore is always a certified Rush classic. You love to see it. Um, and Imola also gave us some pretty good action as well. So I mean, it's really hard to kind of pick a track that I like the most. But honestly, if I were to pick one, you know, if if it was $1 million on the line, I only had 10 seconds to answer what was the best race week of the season so far. I'd have to say Austria. Honestly, that was probably my favorite week of the season so far. Um, it is a pretty high bar though. There is quite a few good race weeks as well. China was a good one. Vegas, Singapore, Australia was another really crazy one. Azerbaijan, that was another fun one too. So I think we've had some really good races here this season, and with the season 11 counter looking pretty spicy from all the intel that I've heard, all the limited intel that I have heard, I think we're in for a wild season next time around. As Campbell Adams is doing the thing that I think he's doing the one thing that is heavily illegal in most countries, being texting and driving, as he has shown up in chat here. That is like an unholy level of dominance that you're so far ahead that you can start texting and driving and still start pulling out a gap to P2.
Yeah, without a doubt, he's got a good enough cushion there.
Yeah, this is basically just career mode for him at this point. That basically he's basically just in career mode, just driving his way throughout the circuit, just unbothered in his own lane and flourishing. Moisturized. He is doing everything that he needs to do here in this race to really show that Mercedes is definitely the team to beat at this stage. Toast is going to try to make things a bit more difficult for the Mercedes team, as he is going to just stay well within that P2 range. And I mean, it's started off kind of tricky for Alpine, but it's become even trickier for Mercedes. Well, popped out Bongo down into P12 with about 7.5 seconds to Marakidon up front. So the field is really just kind of spread out here at this stage. M. John gonna try to continue to close in the gap to Hastan. So we'll see how the rest of that battle is gonna continue on. I mean, these guys really just need to stay in DRS. That's pretty much gonna be the name of the game for them. They don't need to do anything silly. They don't need to risk it for the biscuit. You would have maybe considered making a bit of a risky dive at this stage if it was a regular 50% race, like our regular races that we have here. But because at that point you'd only have 22 laps and it'd be lap 15. But with that being said, it's 15 out of 44. So you still got some time here. So no need to just lick the stamp and send it on through if you don't need to. Dino getting a 3-second time penalty for track limit violations in that Gulf Williams. And speaking of liveries, what has been your favorite livery that we've seen this season here at Rush? I'll let you go ahead and answer that one, Barry. Everybody else in the chat, what's your favorite livery that's on the game so far?
You know what? I've got two really close favourites. I absolutely love the Suzuka livery for Red Bull, and also the bright pink Miami livery for the Racing Bulls. Every single year, those two teams deliver some of the best liveries that we see. It's a shame that, albeit for the 2026 season, I'm actually a big fan of Red Bull's livery, but historically their stock one's been it's been very mid. It's been very much what we've seen year after year, and I know Meraki in particular he hasn't gone for it this time. But usually in NA he does opt for that Suzuka livery. Those two, they just stand out, very clean, very unique. They definitely have to be my favourites.
I'm gonna say the same, honestly. I mean, being a Red Bull fan in person, I do like the special liveries that Red Bull does pull out, especially V-Carb. I actually really do like the V-Carb livery for Miami this season. It's good to see yellow back on the grid for the first time since 2020. But yeah, in terms of liveries here, just to throw a different one out there, as Daniel has picked up another 3-second pen. I think I would say the Ferrari Monza livery is probably one of my favorites. It's such a beautiful livery. It's a good way to kind of make a good throwback to an 80s car, but still make it look kind of modernish at the same time. So it's it's a really beautiful livery. I kind of want to see the Miami livery from Ferrari in, because I actually do like that livery, even though it's a bit of a controversial one.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair shout. One thing we missed while we were going through, the beautiful paint on the cars there. We have seen Lamb go for the pit stop, going for the undercut on those guys he was in the train with JDI, John, and Toast there. So, and he's got a nice amount of clean air to just punch through and just focus on getting some really good initial laps. One thing I think those guys in front need to be worried about is if they leave it too long, not only are they at risk of an undercut from Lamb, they could come out behind Marakidon. Maraki will not move over for them if they push to get past him. If he thinks he's genuinely got the pace to stay in front, he will stay in front regardless of the tyre delta. So those guys got a tough call to make. Do they go now? Is it in line with the pit stop window they've already got planned with their strategy? Or do they just hope that they've still got enough pace left in those tyres to make sure they come out ahead of Maraki and they have the clean air still to punch through and make sure that they can stay right on the back of Lamb and that he's not got too much of an undercut on them?
Yeah, and actually, Katiusha just made his way into the pits as well, so he also just jumped on a fresh set of hard tires. And yeah, that's gonna be the interesting call here, as I think rain is 100% gonna be a factor in this. I'm kidding, no, not even remotely. It looks like a beautiful day, like a perfect day for like a camping trip, perfect day for racing here in Spa-Francorchamps. So rain is not at all going to be a factor in this one. The sky looks as clear as it can get. I think it looks even clearer now than it did in qualifying earlier on. So rain is not going to be a factor in this Grand Prix whatsoever, unless the floodgates open at the most random of times. Toast is into the pits, so he's going to go ahead and make that pit stop to swap out the tires. Um, we do want to hear from you guys, though. Go ahead and tell us what. Well, actually, the questions from earlier as well. What track are you guys hoping to see on the season 11 calendar, which will be revealed at some point, probably before the next season, I would imagine. And what's your guys' favorite livery on the F1 25 game so far? And I'll throw in a bonus question in chat. What's your guys' favorite 2026 livery so far? Base livery or special livery? Put your answers in the chat down below. The pink V garbage peak, yeah, I'm sad I kind of missed out on that one, to be honest. I'm kind of sad I did miss out on it. Um, probably, probably one of my favorites. Is actually the livery that Andre is running on that Williams. That almost like BMW white and blue livery that they ran in Coda this year. That's a fun livery. I love that one. Um, I think Williams actually in general has a bunch of really good livery options.
Yeah, no, I do totally agree. I think even across the board, I think it's becoming quite interesting. I tell you what, I have just noticed as well that Aiden has started to close the gap between Enjon just to deviate off a little bit there, Reckers. He was around 2 seconds or so out, but he's starting to close the gap a little bit. So could he be a bit of an outsider that maybe fights for a podium? I think, yeah, maybe it just comes down to how much he's been looking after those tyres. Symphonic fresh on the hards as well. Katusha and Meraki. Well, Meraki's already managed to get past Andre. Katusha's right on the back of Andre. Andre's going to have to consider coming in soon. John does come straight in, which means Aiden and JDI have stayed out on the mediums as well. I'll tell you what, Reckers, is there a consideration that they're going for the one stop as Lamb there gets a 3 second? Could the guys up in front be going for the one stop while the guys who've pitted earlier might be considering a two stop?
Yeah, that's not really unreasonable, honestly, at this stage. The track is gonna warm up a little bit, so the tires are gonna degrade slightly faster. Although I think it's gonna be a very marginal difference between them. But with that being said, Aiden is actually starting to lose a bit of time now, just a bit. I think it's kind of more. I wouldn't even say he's losing time. I think it's just a bit of an ebb and flow now, at least compared to JDI. The earlier metric of M. John is now valid because he just went to the pits. I think Ryan Adair just sent one on to Toast, so I think he's up a position now. So Toast now gonna try to go ahead and get past Ryan Adair there. And the Ferrari, the lone Ferrari on circuit, the lone prancing horse is being chased down by the French machine of that Alpine, the A525, trying to chase down the SF25. for that P4 position, but Ryan does have a 3-second penalty for track limits. So that's going to make things a little bit more difficult there for the Ferrari man as we go through. But yeah, I think the one stop is actually pretty viable, to be honest. I wouldn't be surprised. Aiden's coming in, and actually, so is JDI. So Campbell really the only one staying out. He'll probably come in next lap because I think looking at the in-game race strategy earlier on, I think it was between lap 20 and lap 25 was kind of the optimal pit window for the mediums to try to make it a one stop. So I actually think the one stop might actually be the preferred strategy here, Barry.
Yeah, if the track evolution, seems to do any good for people, if there's plenty of rubber being laid down, it means that it favours the tyre deg. It could very well much look like that. I mean, I've just been looking at the stops now. Campbell's the only driver on track who hasn't come into the pits. Everyone has now made that change and gone on to the hard tyres. I think there's also a consideration, Reckers, as well. We saw the mediums. There wasn't too much movement as Daniel gets another 3-second time penalty there. There wasn't a great deal of movement once, the grid had sort of settled itself out. Could we see something different with the hards? We know it's a bit harder to get that car turned where they're a much more tankier tyre. We've got a lot of variation in tyre age as well. Not everyone has the same length of time on track on these hards. Could that make it a bit more interesting in this stint? I think we'll probably find out once the hards really come into that optimal window and people start to feel plenty of grip in them and they're in that good temperature window as well.
Yeah, I think that's really going to be the case, honestly, Barry. I think it's just going to come down to, and actually it's a point you brought up earlier on, as Campbell Adams does make his pit stop. Who's been taking care of their tires the best, I think, is going to be such a crucial factor here in the race here at Spa. So with that being said, I think just trying to keep your tires alive for the one stop is probably going to be the go-to. So we probably aren't going to see drivers push as hard as they have previously. As Campbell Adams has now made his stop, he's already coming back out onto the circuit. Now, interesting thing to note is that there's another pit stop area that you can go through. It's more of an endurance layout, which is actually on the just to the right of the source, and that really sharp turn one, and you actually get spat out right here, actually, just at the end of just right before the Camel straight, right after the Camel corner. So I know the endurance layout does like to use that particular pit exit, as it is going to be toast, trying to close in the gaps here. I mean, it's a fine line you gotta walk here at Spa, and it's something we'll probably see just through the entirety of probably the entirety of the week as well. Drivers are gonna go ahead and just try to lock it in and try to lock these positions in, and it's a fine tightrope you gotta walk. You want to be fast enough to stay within the DRS range, but you also want to make it a point to keep your tires alive. So you don't want to go full send, but you still gotta send it a little bit. So you really gotta go ahead and try to manage that one, and just it's an interesting spot to be in, really, when everything is all said and done. Right, we are now just about going through the second half of the race here at Spa-Francorchamps, as Barry has stepped aside to take a bit of a hydration break, which everybody, I know I say every single stream, stay hydrated, grab some water. I know for some drivers, they probably have a ton of caffeine running through their system, and all things in moderation, but be sure to get some water in your system. And these race cars, they run with the best fuels possible to get the max amount of performance. That is the same way that your body tends to operate. Your body will operate the best with water in your system. I know I'm saying that as I am drinking a summer edition Red Bull, the one that the current Miami V-Car delivery is based off of. And oh, yellow flag What has gone awry here? I think it's a Red Bull having a bit of a moment. Might have been Dre having a tad bit of a scare there, a bit of a code brown. But just be sure you drink some water throughout the day. At least at least a bottle of water. You really probably should drink more than that. I know, pot me kettle essentially, because I know I don't drink as much water as I probably realistically should. But stay hydrated. I'm sure these drivers are gonna definitely stay hydrated for this absolute mammoth of a race. Right, so we are pretty much beginning the second half of the race. Normal Grand Prix distance done, but you got a little bit more to go as Dre now gets a 3-second penalty for track limit violations.
Yeah, I did manage to catch a little bit of the incident. What I did see was Katusha in the Alpine making his way across the grass with Dre closely behind. So that there may have been a little bit of contact there that caused a bit of an incident. I can't see any damage on the car there for him, so I think he's potentially just gone a bit wide there, run through the gravel. Katusha can't see any damage. It looks like on his car, no end plates missing. So yeah, thankfully no one being forced to pit earlier than they'd like to. I'll tell you what, Ryan Adair, I mean, it looks like Toast is going to go for a move on the back of them. Brian is really deploying that battery. He's really trying to hang on. I think Toast is going to get the move done and make it stick. M. Johns, he thought about going around the outside, but decided, no, probably not worth it. I'll get that time to go. The undercut has worked really well for Lamb. The only issue is if you can't make enough time up, and really all the cars ended up straight in the DRS train behind him, you've just got to make sure that you've not gone too early, that you're just going to get swallowed up and fall to the back. So it'll be interesting to see whether he can get the move back on Toast or whether it actually starts to lose time again, and M. John and JD basically get the standings back to how they were before the pit stop in the first place.
Yeah, so we'll see. Yeah, I mean, there's only so many variables when it comes to motorsport and racing and such. And I mean, part of it is just making sure that you stay close enough to really maximize the DRS. And it's really just going back to that tightrope thing that I was talking about earlier. You want to be quick, but you also don't want to burn your tires out too quickly, especially if you're pushing for the one stop, as it is a 1:45.080 being the new fastest lap set by a one Campbell Adams. As we do see XD Lamb try to close into the back of the Alpine. We'll see how that one does tend to play out. If you guys want to drive as quick as these drivers here, well, go ahead and test your metal by jumping into the Discord. I'm sure the Twitch message or the bot has been around somewhere around here. I'm sure the Discord link will show up at some point. But if you want to test your metal, go ahead and give it a go. There it is. Thank you, SJ. And oh, here it is. Ryan Adair going for the move, trying to make it clean, trying to shed that Osama bin Adair name tag that he's got at the moment. And he gets the move done nice and cleanly there. Very good move from the Ferrari. Toast now, he's really, that move might have actually caught him off guard, as now we're seeing, like you were saying earlier, Barry, this is an endurance race, both physical and mentally. And now we're starting to see that mentality just kind of slip with a few of these drivers now, starting to rack up the pens.
Yeah, and with the gaps that are amongst some of these drivers, those penalties could become extremely crucial. Notably for Lamb as well, because of the gap between him and Campbell, he is not going to care about time lost fighting. He just wants to make sure that he's got that car ahead on track, so that if that 3-second time penalty does come for Toast, M. John, JDI, that he's in the best position possible. He's just got to be really careful to make sure he doesn't get any more penalties. So we could see when it gets to the end of this race that penalties could really shift up the grid and maybe decide who finishes on that podium, and therefore has a real influence in both the drivers and the constructors' standings.
Yeah, especially with it now kind of being crunch time here, with only 3 rounds to go after this. So you only got like 3 more weeks of racing after this week to really kind of assert your dominance essentially here. Alpine looking really strong in the overalls, but Mercedes, they've been just chipping away at that gap. But and they've been chipping away at it with a scalpel. But you really just need a whole pickaxe to try to knock away huge chunks of points if they want to try to catch up to Alpine, as an Alpine does make a move for P2, as Toast gets back ahead of Ryan Adair for the P2 position on the road. And yeah, it's gonna be really fun just seeing all the divisions really just try to finish up, because we are in the final chapter of the season 10 story here at Rush Racing League. So you really just gotta go for it now. You don't really have a lot of time to really wait. You just gotta make the most of the final 4 race weeks of the season. So with that all being said, it's been a fantastic season here so far, and the spa race is just simply adding to it. Well, we haven't seen as much on track shenanigans as we would have seen in like Austria or such. It's really this track has really just become pretty much like a game of high speed chess here for the most part. Speaking of high speed, a 144 now is the best time set by Campbell Adams, as now Ryan Adair is under pressure from M John. M John though on the first side, but look at this. JDI was thinking about a move. JDI is really a driver who's got everything to play for here, because based on his result here tonight, he could find himself knocking on the door of a championship lead at the closing stages of the season, which could be huge for the Kick Sauber. I mean, especially with, this is Sauber's. I feel like we're back in the real world for a moment. But yeah, this is Sauber's potentially their last season in Rush before jumping into before becoming Audi for season 11 onwards, and then Cadillac as well. So look, I'm actually probably looking forward to Cadillac jumping in, probably more than almost anything else, really, because home team, home manufacturer. Granted, I do wish it was either Hyundai or Genesis, but with that being said, I will take the gladly take the addition of a new team to Formula One, especially an American one of that. Have you heard the rumors of BYD actually potentially jumping in as a 12th team?
Yeah, I think from my understanding, I think there is the capacity for Formula One to have up to 12 teams. Tell you what, I would love to see Lotus back in the sport. It was one of the first manufacturers I ever remember seeing a car of growing up, getting into motorsport. If they could somehow find a way to come back in, that would be absolutely brilliant. There's also plenty of other teams I'd like to see who realistically will never go into the sport. Brands like Koenigsegg, for example. Yeah, no, I agree. Regardless of who the 11th team, just having another team, more drivers on the grid, and let's face it, Cadillac aren't exactly coming in hoping to, cause an upset amongst the long-standing constructors. But hopefully, in years to come, they'll solidify themselves as many other teams have as a really well-established Formula One team.
They're currently in a better spot than Aston Martin at the moment. At least they're faster than Formula 2. Unlike Aston Martin, who are slower than every Formula 2 car at the moment, which is really insane to just think about. Because I mean, the last team. So here's a bit of a unfortunate and fun fact for you. The last time there was a team that was slower than Formula 2 or GP2 was actually back when it was another car that ran that oh so iconic British racing green, and that was actually Caterham. Caterham is, I believe, the last team that had an F1 team that was outqualified by their F2 efforts. And yeah, actually, thank you, Jack. Uh, I think it was Spain 2011. It was definitely Caterham, and which I would love to see Caterham or some other team like that come back into F1. Lotus would be a good shout. Lotus would actually have a pretty good chance to really come back at this one, as M. John's trying to come back into this podium battle here. With Lotus, pretty much being. I mean, there's the Chinese automotive group Geely that owns Lotus, so I mean it's not too far fetched.
Yeah, it certainly would be brilliant to see them back in it. I tell you what, Reckers, Aiden's Raiden is now on the back of this DRS train. He looked like he was catching up at the end of the first stint. I almost wonder if those guys are slowing each other down, where they're so hesitant to make moves in certain areas of the track, particularly in Sector 2. I wonder if Aiden's just been pushing flat out and that's why he's now in the place that he is. So, and once again, could penalties decide whether potentially someone like Aiden in P6 could end up finishing as high as P2 if the drivers can't keep it clean towards the latter stages of this race. So it's been a really good drive, and overall, I think the Racing Bulls will be very happy with their performance so far. If Symphonic can stay there ahead of Katusha, there'll be some decent points and some decent damage done to Alpine's race potentially in the end of this.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, Racing Bulls is another team that has been having some really good performances as of late. They had some wins in the last two race weekends or race weeks with Austria and Baku getting wins in both of those. So, I mean, that's another team that has been really on the up. I think that depending on how they just depending on how stuff settles. I know there's a draft that's going to be at the beginning of next season. That'll kind of shake up the driver lineups coming into season 11. But I think Racing Bulls, with if Symphonic stays at the helm, then I think Racing Bulls is definitely going to be a team that you're going to really have to keep an eye on for next season. I think they're definitely probably going to be one of the dark horses coming up. But I mean, we never know, as Marakidon has retired into the pits, so that is one Red Bull out of the race here, and he will retire and drop back to the back of the field. So Red Bull having a tough run here in Belgium. But another thing to really note here as well, just taking a look at this here, and take a look at the tires again, as Pops Up is on 24 lap old tires. He was very early into the pits earlier on, but here's something worth noting. Aston Martin won the overalls last season. That's why, actually, a fun fact, that's why the Rush logo is actually green, is because of Aston Martin from last season. However, with all that being said, looking at the overalls, they are not even remotely in the window of trying to jump up into even the top five. They have really just fallen way off here when it comes to the overalls. So, who knows? We might see that from Alpine next season. We might see that from literally anybody. Because that's the beauty of sim racing in particular. You never know who's going to be at the top of the food chain. Because, yeah, actually, now I'm officially looking at it, Aston Martin is down in P8 in the overalls. Like, that is a Roman Empire level of downfall from a team that has been so strong in the past.
Yeah, exactly. The key thing when the seasons are as big as this and with the format that we have in Rush, sometimes just having reliable drivers that turn up week in, week out, and even when you can't get them turning up every single week, just being proactive and getting the reserves that you need to score points. I mean, we saw it with Alpine, as it looks like JD really pushed it against Lamb there. We saw with Alpine how one reserve cost them a good amount of points, racking up one hell of an amount of license points. The TPs really are just so crucial, and you really need to make sure from the get-go until the end of the season it's all harmonious, because one blip in how you've got things running, if you just start having drivers like we've got no Aston Martin drivers today, it's a lot of points to lose out on, especially in these 100% races.
Yeah, and I think and that's been a issue plaguing a few teams as well. Another team that has no drivers tonight is McLaren. McLaren, they are pretty much P10 by a country mile, and they've just not been able to get the drivers that they've needed. I mean, I mean, you got no McLarens here tonight, which is a huge hit against your points. There's no Aston Martins like you mentioned, Barry, so that's a huge hit on their points. Haas, in general, has also had a few issues with attendance, so and really the tricky thing. It's just attendance is such a key factor. I mean, in F1, I mean, it would be really rough if some drivers just flat out didn't show up. Like, and we saw how many points McLaren lost when both other drivers didn't even start the race, which I know that's different when they didn't start the Chinese Grand Prix. Bit of a different ballpark, but still, I mean, same effect. As JDI, he's looking to try to kick the Ferrari out of the top four. He's really just trying to use the outside of the Camel Straight. Just unfortunately, he kicked against the door to try to jump in, but unfortunately that door was made of solid titanium and pure Italian pride. And JDI will not be able to go ahead and get the move done. Ryan today not even remotely afraid of the thunder right behind him.
Yeah, he is for sure he's just going to be a nuisance and try and stop JDI as much as he can. The 4-lap tyre delta, I think, is really going to start to show now between now and the end of this stint that they're all on. The one thing is that if Lamb's in a position where he falls out of DRS, he isn't going to be too bothered because he knows he's going to pit sooner. He'll get an undercut on them. Is he going to be focusing more on just trying to cause as much disruption to JDI and Aiden? Aiden looked really keen to try and make a move as well. It almost looked like we were going to see a bit of a Kimi and Schumacher moment as we were on the end of the straight there. So this is really starting to heat up. I'm really intrigued to see whether Aiden can make more progress on this stint, but also exactly when Lamb chooses to pit. There's a decently sized gap that JD might have to do a little bit of work to make sure that once Lamb peels into the pits, he stays in the DRS train of M. John there up in P3.
Yeah, he's definitely got his work cut out for him here tonight. But, I mean, he's got to really just fire it up. He needs to kick it into high gear if he wants to push that Sauber into the lead of the Drivers' Championship here in Div 1. I mean, it is our top division here in Rush. So, I mean, getting a championship in any division here in Rush, especially with how competitive most of these divisions are, it's such an achievement, really. I mean, it's probably one of the biggest achievements in OCE F1 racing is to grab a Rush Racing Championship, just because of the sheer amount of drivers and the sheer amount of competition that we usually get week in and week out here at Rush. So, I mean, if JDI, even if he can lead the championship, that'll be a huge achievement. So, this could be a really good chance for the Kick Sauber to really do something just unbelievable here. He really could. I mean, when we started the season, it looked like the Ferrari of Jono was just going to run away with everything. He won every single event that he jumped into, and actually, technically, that statistic is still true. He's the only race that he didn't win that he was a part of was the Bahrain Sprint. Everything else has been Jono's victory, but unfortunately, I think he's still locked out of his account, unfortunately. So that's why he hasn't been here in the last couple of weeks. Still unable to actually get in, so that kind of killed his championship momentum. I mean, at least right now, it's still looking more likely that Ferrari gets a championship in Rush before they do in the real world. So we'll see how that one plays out. But it is lap 33 out of 44. We are currently about at the end of the third quarter, taking it to American football, and that is gonna be a fun final 12 to 11 laps here, as it's really just going to come down to who's going to pull the trigger first on the pit stop.
Yeah, exactly. Or even like we mentioned earlier, whether anyone does come into the pit stops whatsoever, look at the tyre age on some of these guys who have been on the Haas for a long time. Pop Top, 28 laps. Flubber, 31. Daniel Rock, 26. So clearly the life is in there. It is just more whether, based on the strategy, based on what the engineers and the information they're feeding to the drivers is it quicker to lose those 24, 25 seconds that you do in a pretty short pit stop here in comparison in terms of the distance you need to cover? Can you make the time up by going onto the fresher tyres? I think really, if the guys are going to pit, they probably would have had to have pulled the trigger by now. So I would expect, at least for the guys who pitted in, around 13, 14, 15 laps ago, I think they're probably going to be staying out until the end of this race.
Yeah, probably. I mean, with tire drag really not being an issue here at Spa, I'm not super surprised if we see a lot of drivers just kind of staying out on track and not really risking another pit stop as we go to the final 10 laps, or sorry, final 11 laps of the Grand Prix, including the lap we are currently on. A lot of our drivers making our way through Eau Rouge and Radion. Now coming through Camel onto the Camel Straight, trying to use one of the two DRS zones on the circuit to make up a lot of headway. Now, the DRS zones aren't very big on this track, comparatively to some other tracks that we've been on. I mean, still bigger than Monaco's singular DRS zone that they got, which I feel like there could be another one. I feel like, I mean, granted, straight mode is now the new thing, and they've been more kind of willy-nilly to put on straight line, or straight mode, on different portions of the track. Well, I think Bahrain before was canceled on 4 straight line modes, I think. On the exit of this, or going on start finish straight on the exit of turn 3, right after turn 10, and then actually on the way down to the final corner. As I think we just lost somebody. I was mid stat checking when I lost out on that, or when I missed out on who left. Monaco could have another straight zone kind of coming through that tunnel. So I'd be curious to see how the 2026 cars go through Monaco. But with all that being said, that is a next week thing. But even though the DRS zones are small here, they are mighty as we continue on here. Just pushing through the laps. 10 laps to go now, including the lap we are actively on. So this is going to be a real fight now. Look how close P2 to P6 is, bunched up, all fighting for that P2 position. And they're just having a grand old time of it here. We're going to take a look at the positional changes here. The drivers moved on the most positions. There's actually a tie between Symphonic and Katiusha. So
we got JDI and Lamb side by side. Oh, that was so close. JDI went for the move at the end of the straight. He's going back for it. He's trying to make it. He's going around the outside. Oh, that is great defending from Lamb. Lock up there from JDI. That was very, very well defended. Nice and clean. Plenty of racing room. Yeah, JDI, he's really hungry to get past now. But Lamb, he's just being a nuisance. Sorry to jump in there, Rekus.
Oh, good. You have done nothing wrong there, Barry. That is a very crucial moment in the Grand Prix. The instant I looked away, too, I was going to look at the battle between Katiusha and Symphonic battling it out for that P7 spot. But this, I mean, that's the thing about this pack here. As soon as you take your eyes off of them, they're going to just absolutely just light up the circuit. As it is Pops Out Bongo now joining the time penalty club. He's got a 3-second penalty to his name. Only driver with more than 3 seconds is Daniel, who currently has a 12-second penalty to his name that will be added to him after the race. So we'll see how it goes. It is Daniel's first time in Div 1, I believe, and he is reserving up. So reserving up in the Div 1 is already a daunting task to begin with for anybody. And then on top of that, jumping in for a 100% race is also it is a daunting task. So credit to Daniel for jumping in and sticking it out so far. Still going to get points for Sauber though, because remember, points go down to the top 15 here in Rush. So as long as you stay within that top 15, you're going to get some points, and as long as you stay in the race. So just keeping an eye on here on this fatal four-way or fatal five-way, really, of all these drivers trying to just slug it out for these positions, trying to maximize their points here. Here's the thing, though, with that penalty, though, Ryan Adair will actually drop down to P6 as it sits right now. So he's really just praying and hoping that somebody else gets a penalty here.
Yeah, he definitely will be. I mean, when I was looking at the race director, you know, surprisingly, it's been very clean from a lot of these drivers up top in terms of warnings. Not too many, but we know with these races that can fall apart very, very quickly. And some of the quick flowing corners that we see, it can be quite easy to get two warnings very close together. So these guys just need to make sure they stay switched on and make sure that there's no silly mistakes they're making, because otherwise it'll be catastrophic if they're trying to fight for a podium. It pretty much just seals you at the bottom of this pack up front.
Yeah, and I mean, with that being said, I mean, that's the thing about these endurance races, right? That's why they're such a kind of a spectacle of sim racing, because you have to focus for twice as long on the race itself. So, I mean, you are locked in for an hour and a half straight with no real breaks. Sometimes when it comes to endurance racing in other categories, you do have those driver swaps, as there is a caution. It's a Red Bull. It is Flubber having a bit of a moment just before the start of Sector 3. So a bit of a moment there. But back to the previous point, you got to stay focused for an hour and a half straight. So, which is easier on some tracks than others. I think Spa is probably one of the easier tracks to do it on, just because Spa is, at least for me, I'm not sure about for you, Barry, but it is a very fun track to just kind of drive around at. I could probably honestly do a full race at Spa. It's a tough one, though. It's tough, and unlike, say, if you're doing it like in solo or career mode, you can't really just, like, if you have to use the bathroom, you can't exactly just pause, take a bathroom break, and then come back. No, you are here in a league race. You gotta stay locked in, dialed in. You just gotta hold it like you're on one of those massive road trips with not a single bathroom in sight. But I mean, granted, with that being said, that might not hold him up too badly, considering who it is. But Campbell Adams, 10 seconds for speeding in the pit lane.
That makes it extremely interesting, because even though Campbell Adams he's on a much faster tyre and he's been dominating, that's a huge penalty to have, especially when it looks like the other guys could be just going for a one-stop. He hasn't got long left to make sure he can get some solid laps in to basically just reduce that deficit. He does already have a warning for track limits as well, so he's got to find a balance between not pushing too hard and making that 13 seconds of penalties. If he throws away what was going to be a very dominant win, that is going to be one of the biggest heel turns of this race. You mentioned, obviously, with Spa itself, I think one of the key things with the stamina is that you've got a nice long straight to sit there and make your decisions on. And it's all about the drivers making sure that they stay nice and patient, they don't do anything rash, and just wait until that nice long... It's basically a bit of breathing room. You're stuck in, really engaging in these corners, making sure you're careful of how much curb you're taking. When you get back on the throttle, just utilizing that to just have that downtime mentally to say, what's the weather looking like? How are my tires? How's my ERS? What's the gap? That really then plays into how these guys make sure they stay switched on for the whole race and make the right calls in the right places.
Yeah. And if he's just unable to build up back to that 10-second gap, then we are witnessing the absolute Nishka bottle being transferred from one driver to another. The Nishka bottle being passed on to Campbell Adams. But Campbell Adams, given his pace here today, I think if anybody could make up that gap, I think it is going to be Campbell Adams. But with that being said, if he gets that extra 3-second penalties, it is going to be a tough one. And
yeah,
I'm sure...
Here we go. JDI's gone around the outside. I'm into turn one. We spoke about the amount of time you could lose there. Let's see what the Delta... Is he think he's managed to just keep it within DRS for John there. That was a very risky place to go for the move again, just because of that time lost. But JD's not got much battery left. He could
Oh, look at this!
get swallowed here. Look at this.
3 wide, going. Oh, contact there with the Ferrari and the Racing Bulls. It is drama here in the final couple of laps. The Racing Bulls becoming a very expensive prototype lawnmower, and just drama unfolding here in the last couple of laps. M. John has now been able to run away with this, and him and Toast are just checking out at this stage. Ryan Adair, Aiden is rated, and JDI all went ahead and just fought it out too hard, and they are all out of DRS range. This is just shaking up the dynamic of the entire race. Campbell Adams about to knock that 10-second penalty out of the park. But, just when we thought this race has kind of settled down a bit. Yeah, this has been a very chaotic Grand Prix here at the end. Everything has really come alive. Like that hot sauce that waits until the last moment to kick in.
Yeah, and honestly, I think JD's made a massive mistake there. I think he went too early. He was just left with no battery to defend. And really what's then happened, because he really now needs to two guys in front to help pull him up to P3 and P2 to potentially fight John and Toast. But they both ended up going off on track. JD went back into the gravel. You saw Aiden's Raiden and Lamb having to cut the corner. It's really damaged his chances of getting a podium here. So I think when he looks back on it, he'll be kicking himself that he went for the move so early and didn't just wait until that second DRS zone.
Yeah, you live and learn. But look at this. He's already going to go for a move now on to Aiden. And he will jump up into pretty much a net P4 after Ryan Adair's penalty kicks in. He's got that 3 seconds. He just hasn't been able to make up that 3 seconds. Campbell Adams now with 5 to go. He does break that 10-second gap, so he will not be the recipient of the Nishka bottle, as Nishka did not bottle last week. He actually did manage to get the win, so somebody in Mercedes has to bottle. I don't make the rules around here. All jokes aside, Campbell Adams on that fresh set of mediums, it was honestly kind of a bit of an inevitability. I think even if he did manage to pick up a 3-second pen, I think he would have been able to just continue to run away, and he's already at almost 12 seconds, so he probably could stomach a 13-second pen at the end of it just to make things a bit interesting in the battle for the lead, as M. John is going to continue. Speaking of penalties, Dino is going to go ahead and get one. He's going to get another 3 seconds added, so that's 6 seconds added of pens, which I don't think will really hurt his race too much unless he's fighting with Andre, which not likely. But yeah, I think the stewards won't be as busy as they were last week and the week prior, but I think the stewards are definitely going to have some work that will have to be done here. I mean, you got that turn 1 thing to investigate with Andre, and then you're going to have that moment there just a couple of laps to go to really take a look at. So 4 laps to go here. Who do you think is going to win the battle for P2? Because I think M. John has got more in the tank than he's letting on.
Yeah, you know what? It's a really close one. I think M. John, has just been kind of sitting quietly as we see there. There's a little bit of exchange in positions there between JD and Aiden. Lamb stays in P4. I do wonder if John's just been kind of just sitting back. There's a lot more battery there that John's got on board compared to Toast. So again, it could have been a very similar situation to what those guys found themselves in the first stint, where he says, I'm now putting a really big gap here to Lamb. I've got a really good cushion in case I end up getting a penalty while I try and fight for this last position. It's going to be just finding the right time. It's so easy to make that push too late on when the car in front has just got all that battery saved. If I had to pick and choose, I would say Toast. I think Toast has just been so dominant in his races this season. He's just put in so many stellar performances, and he's driven a really good race today, both in quali and in the main race here today. I quite fancy him to get the P2 sealed and really try and limit the damage Mercedes are doing to Alpine today.
It'll be much needed points for Haas as well. They will have definitely needed those points, considering that they are currently ninth in the overalls here at Rush. So, I mean, they're going to want to try to close in the gap. They're one of two teams that are sub 1,000 points. It's them and McLaren. So they're gonna really just try to rake in as many points as humanly possible. So now it is down to the final 3 laps of the Belgian Grand Prix. The final 100% race of Division 1 is nearing its conclusion as they go to make their way through the Ardennes Forest. They got 2.5 tours left to go here through Spa, and then we go from the longest track to the shortest track next week. We go from here to Monaco, and it'll be under the lights of the Principality of Monaco as we go through here. Battles are still happening all throughout the field, though. This the field is really not spread out like I was kind of thinking it would. I mean, it's really been consistent here, especially within this top 6. We had a pretty good 5-way battle for P2 for quite some time. And then now it has just kind of evolved into just 2 separate battles for position. You got a fight for 4th and then a fight for 2nd happening at the same time. So here's what we're going to go ahead and do. We got 2 to go now. We are going to go ahead and I'm going to let you take this penultimate lap here, Barry, and I'll take the final lap. Over to you for lap 43. Or maybe not, as it is going to be M. John now trying to close in the gap.
Sorry there.
There you go.
My comms were malfunctioning a bit there. I was saying, yeah, Campbell looks like, unless he makes a big mistake, he's basically got this win secured. I guess the question is M. John going to try and make any sort of move here on this lap, or is he going to leave it to the last one? I think this is the dangerous game he's playing. Toast's got no battery. M. John's not dumping it. So is going to be a move for Aiden? Looks like he's going to try and get past Lamb. He goes along the inside there. Lamb breaks later. Still side by side. Is Lamb going to fight back? He manages once again. He's defended very well today, Lamb, even though it's not going to make a difference in terms of where he finishes in the final standings. He's just been such a nuisance to these 2 drivers behind. He's just kept that door slammed shut, doing it fair and cleanly. So yeah, it's now going to come to this final lap, which you're going to have the joy of spectating over, Rekus, in a moment, of where the last bunch of moves are going to be made. Who's going to be finishing in P4 between Aiden and JD, and then who's going to claim that second spot on the front row between Toast and M. John.
Yeah, that is all going to be to play for here, as it is going to be the final lap of the Belgian Grand Prix. Campbell Adams crosses the line to begin his final tour of the Circuit Spa de Francorchamps here in Stevelad, Belgium. We've had 43 laps of racing action here. 1 more to go. There's battles happening all throughout. While the battle for the lead is non-existent, the battle for P2, it is red hot here at the moment. M. John locking out the brakes, coming through La Source. Now let's see how the battle for P4 is going to go. Aiden's Raider really trying to close in the gap. He does have end plate damage, though. He is missing an end plate on the right side, so he's going to lose a bit of downforce here. So this is going to be interesting to kind of see. M. John now closing in the gap. He's going to look for the move. Going to send it around the outside. And that is a Hasta class right there. P2 for the Haas driver. Good move around the outside. Mercedes will be happy about that one, as it is their rivals in the overalls dropping another position. And this is going to be a spicy battle here. The Sakura themed car trying to run away with that P2, but it is going to be just a tough battle to hold on to. But I think now that M. John's got that position, he'll do everything that he can to hold on to it. And a driver who looked a 10-second penalty in the face and basically told it to get lost, he is going to make his way through the bus stop chicane for one last time. And Campbell Adams wins the Belgian Grand Prix It'll be a good victory for him there. It'll still have a 12-second buffer at the end, as now the battle for P2 is going to be red hot here. Who's going to go ahead and win this one? Flubber will finish a lap down here at Belgium. It's going to be just depending on who gets a better exit through bus stop. And it's going to be a tight one, but it is going to be M. John getting P2 ahead of Toast. And it looks like Aina's Rated will get that P4 position. JDI jumps up into P5. They're going to scramble for these positions here. And that is going to be P5 for JDI, P6 for Osama Bin Adair. And then Symphonic will jump up into P7. And then the rest of the field will follow through. A really good battle there right at the end for P2. But our winner, with no contest and a 13.3 second gap, even with a 10-second penalty, Campbell Adams.
Tell you what, Ruckus, what a race and what an end as well. I tell you, M. John did really, really well to lock in that P2 at the end there. I'll tell you what, this was probably a more exciting 100% race than maybe some people thought it was going to be. Even when there was nothing going on, you could just smell the suspense that was, something was going to happen. It was just about when. And yeah, I think the guys who have managed to get those moves done on the last lap will be very happy with their race at the end there.
Yeah, it was all a build-up, was pretty much how this race was kind of set up. It was all a build-up. They never let themselves, there was never any point where everybody was super far spread out, like what we can see during some of these 100% races, where everybody is so far spread out that you can't even really stay close. But here, everybody was just close for the most part. You had a few separations. As we go through, it is going to be Aina's Raiden, driver of the day, Campbell Adams getting the fastest lap and the race win. Most overtakes, Aina's Raiden, and Toast being the cleanest driver. So taking a look at our field here today, our final result is going to be Campbell Adams getting the Grand Slam here ahead of M. John, Toast, Aina's Raiden, JDI, and then Ryan Adair, Symphonic, Katiusha, Pop Top, Andre, Dito, Flubber, Daniel Rocks, and Marakidon rounding out the field here today. So that is going to be it for the Belgian Grand Prix, but we do still have some interviews. We're going to talk to our top three plus the driver of the day. So we're going to work towards getting those drivers into the comms box. But in the meantime, Barry, what a race we have witnessed here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Having done a 100% race here myself, it's grueling, and it's a massive testament to the guys to be able to get this finished in the first place. And a lot of drivers just with no penalties as well. So they really showcased their mental stamina and making sure that they didn't just crumble towards the end there. So yeah, I think a lot of them will be very, very happy with their race. Maybe some would have hoped to get a few more points, but a lot of them across the board, I think, are going to feel very satisfied with how they finished.
Yeah, exactly that. So we'll just kind of see. I mean, there's still going to be some stuff under investigation by the stewards. So we'll see how all that just kind of settles in. But in the meantime, we do have some of our interviewees. We got two of them here at the moment. We're going to give it another minute or so to just kind of see where the last one kind of jumps in at. But we'll go ahead and see just where the others are at. We're going to go ahead and get started with the two we currently have, and then we can circle back if need be. So we're going to talk to our driver who came in P3. We're going to start with Toast. Now, Toast, I mean, you were holding on to that position for dear life up there until the final lap. How would you rate your 100% race overall here tonight?
Pretty happy, because I'm actually a Div 2 driver, so I can't believe I'm on the podium. And like almost half of the race, I kept him behind, but unfortunately, I lost out to the end. So yeah.
Yeah, you only got 3 more rounds left of the season. You got Monaco, Zandvoort, and Silverstone. How are you feeling about those upcoming tracks, and what's the energy in the Alpine Garage as you guys continue to lead the overalls?
Yeah, pretty confident so far with a podium today and still like holding a 100 point advantage from the overalls. So I think we'll manage to hold on in these last 3 weekends, and yeah.
Yeah, it should be a fantastic finale, or fantastic final 3 weeks of the season here for you guys. Last question before I pass you on to Barry: is there anybody you'd like to give a special thanks or a shout out to here tonight?
Shout out to my team for the setups and strategies. Yeah.
All right, well, congratulations on the podium, and I'll pass you over to Barry if he's got any other questions or comments.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Toast. I mean, to begin with, I mean, you were staying right on the back of Campbell. I mean, you showed in quali that you weren't miles away from his pace, and he's been very dominant in the recent races, especially after taking a win away from Fat Cat, who's been just running away with every race win. How were you feeling in those first sort of few laps where you really were just sticking with Campbell's pace?
Well, to be honest, I couldn't really believe that I was hanging on at the start, but during like lap 6 or something, he was saving out of battery and like he pulled away suddenly like by a second. So I knew that he wasn't my fight for the race, and like I just had to hold on to P2. But overall, I'm pretty happy that I was somewhat close at the start.
No, I can absolutely imagine. I mean, as soon as Campbell pulled out of DRS, you could just see see how fast he truly was.
Yeah.
I'm not. I don't know if you could hear us in the stream, but we were so intrigued on the battle that was going on for between P2 and P6 in both stints there. What was going through your mind? Were you keeping a really close eye on those guys behind? I'm not sure if you had anyone engineering from you, but were they keeping you up to date with just how close it was in those remaining 5 spots?
Not really. Like I was only focusing on third place behind because like with the DRS train, there's not really a threat from the other guys behind. So yeah.
No, that's good to hear. And the last one from me, Rekka's already touched base in it. Obviously, we've got some very difficult tracks in the last 3 races of the calendar. Is there anything in particular that you're going to be taking from this race into the next one, where where the fight is so close between you and Mercedes in the overalls?
Um. Well, we'll definitely have to look out for Monaco. It's a very difficult track, like easy to make mistakes. So we definitely have to really practice for that.
Yeah, no, I can imagine all you guys are going to be really doing your homework on what guys are going to get nailed across the divisions for Monaco. But no, great race today, Tosin. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right, well, now we're going to go ahead and jump up to P2, the driver who grabbed it right at the last moment, and it is M. John. Now, M. John, you were pretty much just glued to the back of the Alpine through the final stages of the race. How does it feel to get a podium for a team that definitely needs those points?
Yeah, feels quite good. I was just sitting behind Toast. I knew that I wouldn't be able to pull away, so there was no point in wasting a rest and stuff trying to get past. But yeah, very happy with my race. It's good points.
Yeah, and now we're down to the final 3 rounds of the season. We got Monaco, Zandvoort, and Silverstone coming up next. Which of those 3 tracks are you the most excited for, and which one are you the least excited about?
Silverstone should be good. I've always enjoyed that track. Monaco, I might accidentally throw my wheel out the window, so I don't think I'll be there for that one. I'll be there probably. But yeah, Netherlands should be good as well. So yeah, not too bad overall.
Yeah, Monaco is going to be a fun one. I think that's the one I'm actually the most interested in out of that bunch, considering that it is a night race as well. So that's gonna throw an extra wrench into the works. But with that being said, should be a fantastic week next week. But last question before I pass you over to Barry. Anyone you'd like to give a special thanks or shout out to here tonight?
Mainly Gangster. He wasn't able to engineer me today, but he's been doing all that, so I'm appreciative of him. And he gave me the seat in the first place, so definitely him. And I guess a couple others that I've been practicing with, Zach and Ninvim. They're the main people I practice with. So
All right, well, congratulations on the podium, and I will pass you over to Barry if he's got any other questions or comments.
Yeah, like I've already said to Toast, Amjad, we were so just captivated by those fights. I guess the big thing that really made it for you was that Ryan was defending so hard against JD and Raiden as well. Was that something that you really noticed once that gap started opened up? Is that when it set in that actually the podium looks pretty much secured for you?
Yeah, that definitely helped. I was trying to make sure that Thunder didn't get past Ryan because obviously Ryan has a 3 second, and also Thunder was on my back most of the race, and you could tell he was quicker, but he just couldn't get past because of the DRS. So yeah, when they started fighting, that was very good. And then my goal was to just try to get past Toast as late as possible, so he couldn't get me back.
Absolutely, it sounds like leaving it till the last moment to get past Toast was all part of the plan. Really, you looked like you were managing the ERS so well. Was it effectively just seeing the gap between Campbell and Toast that made you think, I'm not going to bother, I'm just going to leave it as late as I can?
Well, yeah, I got a bit excited when I saw Campbell had a 10 second, but then I realised it was 40 seconds down the road, so it didn't really matter. But yeah, it was good. Yeah, just wanted to keep behind Toast. And with the ERS, it's pretty easy to save if you just keep it on none to the corners. So that's just all I was doing.
Definitely, and like Reckers has touched based on, these are massively needed points for Haas given where they are in the overalls. Are there any, which of the tracks that are remaining do you quite fancy a chance to score high points on? We know Monaco can be one where as long as you keep it clean, you'll do pretty well. But do you fancy your chances at Zandvoort in particular, or?
Yeah, I don't mind Zandvoort. I haven't driven it with like a good setup. Like I've only started league racing fairly recently, so I haven't got like a good setup for it. So I'm not too sure yet, but hopefully, yeah.
Yeah, well, given that context, finishing where you have in a very competitive division in Rush is definitely something to be proud of. Yeah, like I said, great race today, and yeah, we'll be excited to see what you can do in the last 3 rounds, see where you can help Haas push closer up in the overalls. Thank you very much.
Yep. All right. Thank you, guys.
All right, last but most certainly not least, we're going to go ahead and talk to our race winner of Campbell Adams. Now, Campbell, you had a very dominant run here in Spa. Wasn't super, it was pretty close to qualifying, but you never really had to use your rear view mirrors hardly at all in that race. How do you feel?
Yeah, qualifying wasn't great. I had a pretty scruffy qualifying, to be honest. But yeah, the race was good. Obviously, I was just managing the first like 8, 9 laps or so, just trying to help out my teammate. But after that, yeah, just decided to push a little bit harder, and then was able to get a bit of a gap, and then obviously pitted. But we wanted that fastest lap, so I had to extend, and then decided to make my life a lot harder and get a 10 sec. So yeah, there were a few mistakes, but overall good race.
A little bit of a gap, he says, as it would have been a 23-second gap if he didn't get that 10-second pen there for speeding in the pits. But a very good race from you here tonight. How do you feel about Monaco next week, as it's a night race?
I mean, I don't think I've driven Monaco like other than in time trial this game, so it'll be something interesting. We'll see how it goes. We'll have to do a little bit of practice, and obviously qualifying is the biggest key at Monaco, so that'll be very interesting.
What's the energy like in the Mercedes garage as you guys are just trying to chip away at Alpine's lead in the overall?
Yeah, we're very motivated to beat them, that's for sure. That's our entire goal, just to finish first in the overalls, and I think we're doing a pretty good job at closing the gap. Obviously, we're struggling in a few divisions, but I think overall we're doing a good job.
All right, well, that's all for me. I'm going to pass you over to Barry if he's got any other questions or comments. Congratulations on the win.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah, just echoing records there. Congratulations on the win, Campbell. It was a very very dominant win, that's for sure. I guess the one thing that's standing between you and making the most progress you can in Mercedes really upsetting Alpine is Wildcat and Jammy. How much of an excitement was there to see that they weren't racing today?
It was definitely a relief because it definitely takes a lot of the pressure off because they're usually the fight. So it would have been interesting to see what would have happened if they were here. I'm sure they would have beaten me in qualifying because, yeah, as I said, it was a very scrappy qualifying, but it would have been an interesting race for sure. So, but I'm glad we didn't have to find out what happened. So we'll see how we go in Monaco.
Yeah, and of course these are huge points you've gained with a few more points being up for grabs for these 100% races. Is there anything in particular that you're taking into these last three races, given that it just seems like every week Mercedes are just etching that little bit closer to Alpine and just showing that they're not going to let them go?
Oh yeah, just got to focus on maximizing every race, and honestly, just try to win every race from here on out, and help as Mercedes as much as possible.
Perfect. And the last question from me, because Alpine have gone from looking like they were going to absolutely run away and dominate the overalls to Mercedes just switching into a completely different gear. What is it that's made Mercedes push so hard and get so many good results? Has there been anything that's changed, or has it just been more of just staying consistent and just keeping the energy levels up?
I think there's definitely been a change in level. I think we've all taken a step, but I also think consistency-wise we're a lot better. But there's definitely still a lot to gain. We're nowhere near maximizing what we could be doing, but I think if we keep going in this direction, we'll be on Alpine very soon.
No, it's good to hear. Once again, congratulations on the win today, Campbell, and yeah, good luck in the fight for the overalls. Be exciting to see if it goes right down to the wire.
Yep, thanks guys. Cheers.
Alrighty, everybody, that's going to go ahead and wrap things up here in Division 1. We still got 4 more divisions of Spa-Francorchamps coming at you, starting with Division 2 tomorrow night. But, I mean, if any of the divisions deliver like Div 1 delivered, then we have a banger of an endurance week coming up here. It's been a fun time here with myself and Barry. Oh, go ahead.
As I say, we absolutely do. I'm excited to see what we're in store for the rest of this race week.
Anything else you would like to add before we go ahead and sunset the stream here, Barry?
Yeah, I think for the guys who who enjoy these 100% races, I think they all just need to make sure they definitely take on board just how much of an achievement it is. A, to finish. B, to get it without any penalties. But C, to make sure they're just attending every single week. It's a lot of stamina needed to keep doing it week after week. But I'll tell you what, this overalls fight, Rekus, is becoming more and more interesting. So I think once we see how the results pan out in Div 2, I think we'll start to get a little bit of a feel of whether this overalls fight is going to potentially finish at the final round at Silverstone.
Oh yeah, I think Mercedes and Alpine are definitely going to be brutal rivals on the track here. And especially, you got divisions where Alpine is really strong, and then you got divisions where Mercedes is really strong. But it's not just 4 cars fighting for these positions. You got up to 20 cars in every single division battling it out for these spots. So VCARB has been really strong in this last week as well. So VCARB are definitely going to be a team to kind of take notice of. Sauber, always, is another kind of constant threat. Williams in Div 5, they have been a threat. They have been really just chipping away at both teams, really. But yeah, overall, we do have some really good races coming up here for the rest of the Endurance Week. On behalf of Barry, my name has been Patrick Goldman, a.k.a. Rekus, and we have been your hosts and commentators for tonight's action. Massive thank you to Sim Racing Center, SimLab, and Pagnian Advanced Simulation. And, of course, a massive thank you to all of you guys in the Twitch chat for being as awesome as always. But that's going to wrap things up here. Stay hydrated and tune in tomorrow for Div 2 at Belgium. Have a good night.